Okay. All right, welcome everyone. First off, we have some housekeeping items. Please mute your mic while others are presenting. And please also click the participant list and make sure your name is correct. I'm going to also ask everyone to turn off your cameras. This meeting is going to be recorded and posted to our website and social media later this week. If you do have questions, I would encourage you to enter them in the chat. We'll also have time for questions at the end of the meeting. Okay. Welcome to G2G Rail Trails 2023 Annual Members Meeting and Stakeholder Update. My name is Willow Hall. I'm the Executive Director for G2G Rail Trail Inc. We will now acknowledge the lands from which this meeting is being broadcast from. Waterloo Region is situated on treaty land that is steeped in rich Indigenous history and home to many First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people today. We acknowledge this land is the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee, Anishinaabe, and Neutral peoples. We recognize the enduring presence of the Indigenous people with whom we share this land today, their achievements, and their contributions to our community. We offer this acknowledgement as an act of reconciliation between the Indigenous and non-Indigenous people of Canada. All right, on the agenda for tonight, we have an introduction from Doug Searson, followed by a recap of 2022. Next, we'll have our governance review report and a presentation of G2G's audited financials. Lastly, we will hold our annual G2G members meeting before going over the projects slated for this year. Following the formal meeting, there will be a presentation from Chris Lee about how we can unlock the full potential of the G2G Rail Trail experience. Okay, to start off, we have one of our founding directors, Doug Searson. Doug is a tireless and passionate advocate for the G2G Rail Trail experience going back 13 plus years. He has served as the chair of the board from 2016 to 2018, and more recently as the executive director from 2019 to the start of 2023. Welcome, Doug. Just going to unmute Doug now. Okay.
Okay, there we are. Thank you, Willow. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the 10th year of the G2G Rail Trail experience. It's been a long road. It's been a challenging road. And it's been a rewarding outcome for some. It's also been exhausting. I could not be prouder and more excited for our G2G family as we look forward to the next 10 years. And you may pick up in the tone of my voice or heard it from me directly in the last few months, but it should sound an awful lot like I'm stepping down. Willow could not be a more capable person to take over as the executive director role. And as you'll hear tonight, we've got a whole new slate of board of directors that's came out from our call for that. So yes, I'm finally going to take a break. And just for the record, that picture you're looking at has nothing to do with the break that I'm going to take. It's just a picture with me with the OPP. It's no indication of where I'm going. It's great to see those guys out in the trail. I ran into them on the trail in the fall and got a chance to talk with them, and they were so excited to have a fat tire patrol going, and I was couldn't be happier. And it was never. It's really only maybe myself that understands how much of an achievement that was going back from the start when we were begging for police presence and just more people out there to help us to keep our users feeling safe when they're out in the trail, especially when you get into some of the areas that don't have as much visibility. It's just a photo that reminds me of the long road and where we've come from and how great it is to have regular users out there and how much we appreciate all of that. I'd like to acknowledge Willow Hall again. He's your host tonight. He's the newly appointed full-time executive director, and Willow is a deserving and capable individual. Before we had Willow, we enjoyed the benefit of many other individuals. Chloe Klopp, who gave us 3 solid years. Kian, Josh, Grace ×2. We had Grace back-to-back races. Lucy and Mike and many others that stepped up and worked in administrative roles. Mostly in a fairly undercompensated position, but it's very good for us right now to look forward and know that we've got a full-time executive director and we've got that focus as we go forward. Each year we've moved forward, we've also added more projects to the to-do list. You've heard it from me before, and it's been a long list that intertwines with our 13 communities, 17 municipalities, which extends over 132 kilometers. It is a big and unique trail, and very happy to say that is now a household name. So Willow's got a map here up on the screen for you, and this one we've shown many times. This is our Google Maps that we set up and we got going many years ago. What I wanted to focus on here is not the vastness of it. Everybody knows the vastness of it. It's got lots of points of reference and data points on that map. Now we put all of our projects on here and our kilometer markers and people who have supported us with recognition and pictures of different aspects. But I want to focus on that top corner up there. Maybe Will, you can circle that with your mouse. We're nearly at 3 million views of this map. Now, this is a neat example of administration nightmare. The map was created way back when we weren't a formal charity and we were just getting things going. So we created it with our default address. And if we change that to our G2G address and ownership, it starts the clock again. But I think that's a great thing. I think we should redo our map and start from zero and celebrate that again. But I did want to point that out because it does really show the vastness of where we've come from. So also tonight, you're going to see a new set of board of directors have been put forward, and you'll have the opportunity to ratify that slate of directors. The neat thing was when the call went out there was roughly 20 individuals who stepped up to the call. And, you know, we're not getting 20 people, but we're getting several new board members. And it's such a great thing to see. But what it really told us was the depth and the breadth of where people were coming from. And again, just emphasizing that G2G has become that household name. Now, for myself personally, my number one priority is to continue mostly with my feet and my pedals, a little less than feet up in the boardroom tables or the desk working behind a computer, but a little bit more of my feet and my pedals. But I want to continue to do my support of G2G the same way I've done it for the last 15 years. And I'll continue in an advisory role as needed and continue to deliver a strong message when I'm out there. I'm looking for the funding. The funding for G2G does not go away. It continues to be one of the greatest linear communities anywhere. And this is what any trail should be. It should not just be a feeling of community. It should be a physical community. And that's what we have. We actually have the unique aspect of having 13 communities all interrelated because of the way the rail line connected us. And again, that was something done far before we came along with the rail line, but it's something that we're carrying forward. And I think we should all be quite proud of. We're all like-minded individuals in those communities. And that's something that really binds us all, no matter which section of the trail you experience or you live in. I want to know that in 10 years from now, no matter where any of us are sitting, or rather, I should say, where any of us are walking, hiking, or biking, we can be proud, you as supporters of G2G and the folks who have been helping us all along the way, you can be proud of the progress that we've made up to this point and what the goals going forward look like. And we're hoping that in 10 years, 20 years, you know, we see that continued legacy and that the trail is going to exist far beyond our own backyards. Now, at this point, I do need to recognize one of our one of the first people that stepped up to my call for help back in 2008. We lost a trailblazer this year. We lost Doug Coda, who passed away a few months back. Doug was the first person who physically answered my original call for help back in 2008. And it wasn't a call for help. I wasn't trapped under a tree in the trail or anything like that. It was just simply putting a message out there through all the different municipalities and groups and telling this story of why the Kissing Bridge Trailway and the Medicine Tongue Bridge group and the Maitland Trails Association and the North Huron municipality, why they were right in what they were doing 10 and 15 years before G2G was finally weaved together and made into the G2G Rail Trail experience. And that was a call I put out there, and Doug stepped up. He was an avid cyclist, and was an avid trail outdoor enthusiast, and truly a community champion. He did many more things far beyond working with the trail in the early years that we got things going. So I'd like for everyone to keep the Coda family in their thoughts when you're out there enjoying the G2G Rail Trail. Keep them in mind. We've had many other contributors along the way. I've recognized them over the years, but you know, as my last recognition, I think at these meetings, Sarah Wilhelm, Mike Curtis, the Kissing Bridge Trailway, of course, the pre-existing us, and the Medicine Tongue Bridge Association, the Maitland Trails Association, all pre-existing us, as well as a whole bunch of steward groups who were already in place, and including the municipality of North Huron. But like Doug Coda, we also had Sarah and Paul and Tim, and of course, Chris Lee, who continues to give of his time and stepping up multiple roles over the years, including now interim chair of the board when Jim Sen had to step down in the fall. There were so many people that came to the call, and it was really it's been something. It's been something for me to watch. It's been something to see, and it's something to be proud of. What started out as a wish list by a handful of outdoor enthusiasts has really transformed into a full-time going concern trail management business and trail advocate. That's what G2G is. We have to maintain the trails that we become responsible for, the sections of trail we become responsible for, and we have to continue to advocate that people use this trail obviously safely, but more importantly, take advantage of it. It's there for the public to use, and the more people that know about it, the more people enjoy it, the better life is, because life is always better when you're biking or hiking or walking the trail. I'm going to sign off now and give it back to Willow just with three words. It is great. Thanks, guys. Take care.
All right. Thanks for that inspiring message. G2G Rail Trail would like to thank you for all your dedicated years of service to the charity. We look forward to having you as such a knowledgeable advisor to support our new board through their transition. Okay, and now we have a review of 2022 from our current interim chair of the board, Chris Lee. Chris stepped up to chair the board last September after the current chair, Jim Sen, had resigned. Also a founding director, Chris has freely given hundreds of hours over the past 10 years of his personal time and energy to further our mission as a charity. We are grateful to have him as part of our legacy.
Hi, Chris Lee here. I am privileged to be here to bring you a summary report of significant activities that that your organization undertook in the past year. I will start off with the community wealth framework that was developed through the winter. This was a narrative really to support the fundraising for the Blythe Tunnel, but in fact it's making the case for the value of the trail, and we benefited from the input, third-party input from folks with a lot of fundraising experience, government experience, and general messaging oversight on putting this all together. I'm going to be referring to it later, so I won't go into it in any great detail here, but it is a legacy tool that we will be able to use going forward, and contains the language that we want to incorporate into our messages, project descriptions, and funding applications in future. The other second item that we got to was Project Blue. That was our end-to-end grooming project with Sean Dougherty leading that effort. Again, for second year in a row, we got from Goderich through to Guelph with a grooming. The intensity of the grooming effort varied greatly from one section to the other, but the intent was to cover all of it, to maintain the edges and to the extent that was possible, suppress center growth and so on, and certainly for all of the trail users and the trail supporters and stewardship groups be seen to looking after the whole trail, which in fact it has done. In May, the Tourism Relief Fund opened up. This was a fund of funding that flowed from FedDev down through FedDev Ontario, which is federal funds, directed through the RTO4, which is our regional front end for the Ministry of Tourism and Recreation in Ontario. This was projects up to a maximum of $100,000. After this opened up, we realized that by strategizing with sponsoring partners, we could in fact access more than a single project fund. And so we set out to utilize the wealth framework to develop the narrative for the project descriptions, and to seek out partners who had a vested interest in the trail and a willingness to participate in the funding applications. So we ended up, our funding sponsors were Menastongue Bridge Association, Maitland Trail Association, Blythe Lions Club, Millbank Business Association, and the Linwood Lions Club. And the projects were developed and submitted. And in June, much to our surprise, we were successful in all of them. Highly unusual, and I think speaks to to some degree to the strength of the community wealth framework that we used, but also to the concept of building a coalition of communities up and down the trail to carry out work on the trail, as opposed to being driven strictly through G2G as an organization. These projects included ash tree removal, end to end, and ultimately was close to 7,000 trees. It included surfacing with stone dust on the sections of the trail where it was thin and the breaking down or experiencing regrowth. In total, I think we're close to 20 kilometers in that. It also involved improvements to access points. So from Millbank through to Godrich, we were able to improve the accessibility and the wayfinding and the safety features of access points all through that section. We ultimately have put a bridge in at Millbank, and the final project, was the development of a, we call it an arboretum between the two. It's the bridge to bridge project at Godrich from Highway 21 through the Menastongue Bridge. As I say, these projects were all successfully funded. We set up a whole series of sort of templated controls and management systems from MOUs and terms of reference and flow diagrams and so on to manage these projects, and had set up weekly communications with the project sponsors and the project managers who the sponsors allocated to those projects. Developed sort of channels of communication to ensure coordination with G2G. It really was a tremendous effort on the part of a lot of people to make this all work, to control it and to manage it, and build in the accountability, the safety, all the things that people are looking for. In addition to the 5 projects that ultimately were sponsored, there was also 2 municipal tourism relief funded projects, one in North Perth to develop a access point and accessible parking and access to the trail, and a kiosk, as well as in Blythe to more tightly integrate the trail into the activities in Blythe with additional signage and kiosks and so on, especially with the new outdoor theater. There was also a private TRF project, if you haven't seen it, next to Road 25, with some small overnight cabins. So in total, it was 8 projects, bringing something in excess of close to $750,000 once you include the in-kind contributions that came along to execute the projects as well. The other piece we did later in the year, and in some respects, it's, I guess, a response to how the organization was able to manage or not. And in dealing with this volume of work, it brought out gaps and weaknesses in our governance systems and concerns. So we were able to retain Bill Allen to undertake a governance review and audit, the results of which you will see as a separate report. But Bill engaged our executive members as well as board members and exhaustively dug through our documentation, interviewed everybody, and as I say, you will see the report and the results of that. And we see this as essentially a legacy to the new board, to guide them in carrying the organization forward. it really drew out the need to move from being an operational board to a board of governance and strategy, and to strengthen our executive roles. That was evident as we worked through these projects. The Blythe Tunnel was it. We were able to continue on with fundraising towards it. It's not completed fundraising. There was also engineering completed on pre-preparation. So that project is shovel ready. The tendering documents are ready to go, and all that remains is to complete the funding. We completed multiple applications and were denied on a couple of them, but we still have one pending and a private donor standing by, and are anticipating that this project can move forward in the coming year, and we'll again address that later. So that's the sum of all our significant activities for the year, and I'm happy to take any specific questions about specific projects later on. Thank you. Hi.
Thank you for putting that video together, Chris. We appreciate your leadership and guidance as we navigate this new chapter in G2G's history. Having local advocates like yourself is a major part of why the G2G Rail Trail experience has been so successful. After 10 years of operation, G2G Rail Trail has become a household name and is lovingly referred to by its supporters as the G2G. Throughout this time, governance structures have been implemented and improved based on the specific needs and goals of the charity. After 10 years of operation, it seemed prudent to look back at our governance structure and review some of the challenges and successes of our organization. To that effect, G2G Rail Trail Inc. has retained the services of WRA Management Group, a leader in charitable governance best practice, to conduct an audit of our governance structure and documents. Okay, we would now like to welcome Bill Allen from WRA Management Group to present the findings of this audit. I believe Bill might be having some trouble connecting. Bill, if you are one of the participants who is unnamed, then please just change your name and we can have you jump right in. In the meantime, I'm going to ask one of our directors, Ruth, to step in and present. Welcome,
There we
Ruth.
go. I think I'm on now. Yeah, I was looking forward to Bill presenting this. Bill Allen's very highly regarded as a consultant in the nonprofit and charitable governance areas. So in the past year, we did think it prudent as a board to bring Bill in to have a look at our bylaws and look at the organization structure and give us some advice on how to move forward into the next 10 years, because this is a critically important endeavor and we wanted to get it right. So when Bill put the study together, there he is actually, his hand is up.
Perfect.
Yay.
I'm going to cut you off then. Okay, we'll just wait for Bill to unmute himself, start his video.
Okay.
Welcome.
Am I on audio now?
Yeah, you're perfect. Perfect timing.
Okay, and thanks, Bruce, for jumping in there. I'd come into Zoom a little differently than I had before, and so actually the name of my computer was there instead of my name. So sorry about that. Just before I begin my presentation, I'd like to say that as an avid cyclist myself, I'd like to congratulate the G2G Rail Trail for the last 10 years. You developed a tremendous asset for many people to enjoy for years to come. I've certainly ridden on a number of trails all over North America, and I really appreciate how much money, volunteers, and at times perseverance to really maintain the trail. So thank you for that. As Willow and Chris have already mentioned, we undertook this governance review to look at the documents that are currently in place, review them. Are there some that should be revised? Or are there some documents that should be developed that aren't there? Any gaps in the governance documents? And then just the processes that are involved in not just maintaining the trails, but around some of the capital projects that are undertaken. Next slide, please. So part of the study, and Chris alluded to this, I interviewed current and former board members, interviews with the executive director, and at that time, Willow was executive coordinator. I reviewed the bylaw and the organizational policies of the board. I reviewed board minutes and also some of the operational agreements between G2G and the trail organizations, and also the organizational document or operational documents. Next, please. Willow also mentioned that it's been a few years since you've done a governance review, but it is good practice, certainly every 5 years or so, to review, particularly when you have a regular turnover of directors, and just to determine if the corporation is being operated effectively and properly. And the last bullet point is important. As a charity, which G2G is, it's important that all the CRA rules are being met. Next slide, please. So just to give you a quick overview of the various players involved in both the board and the members. So as members, it's your role, you'll do this later this evening, appoint the directors to the board. You receive the annual audited financial statements and also appoint the auditor for the upcoming year. Ultimately, the members are responsible to make sure that the board is appointed and that the organization is being run properly. The board itself sets the strategic priorities, the annual goals for G2G, and just determines how well are we doing? Are we making progress? And I know Doug Searson, when he gave his report, he did a very good job of summing up the priorities over the years and how well they've been achieved. Provide oversight for the organization. That's critical, that you want to make sure that the organization is meeting all the legal requirements and being run properly. And of course, set the annual budget, and ultimately make sure that the organization is sustainable on into the future. And then staff, they're responsible for managing the operation and really progressing towards achieving what goals and priorities have been set. Next slide. So some of the observations, Chris talked about the G2G board being an operational board, and it is more challenging than just being a governance board. So you need to provide the governance oversight, but you also get involved in the nuts and bolts of delivering on the priorities. You don't have a lot of staff to do the delivery. You have to depend on volunteers, and in fact, the board is quite involved in volunteering as well. Much more complex than just a straight governance board. And as in bullet point number 4, it is a complex governance and accountability for management, maintenance, fundraising, and managing capital projects. There's no question it's a complex situation. You have a lot of moving parts. You've got the rail trail itself, you've got the trail organization, you've got municipalities, conservation authorities, and interested adjacent landowners. You also have multiple leases and leaseholders. Dell Management that manages those on behalf of the government. So when you have multiple leaseholders, that creates a lot of challenges that have to be managed. And also multiple funding sources, multiple funding recipients. Chris covered the capital funding that was received this past year. That's great. That helps you build up some of the deficiencies in the trail, like the bridges, but that does require management of not just the funds, but the actual projects. And then finally, the shared accountabilities. Because of the complexity of the relationships, the accountabilities and maintaining those relationships is so critical. Next slide. So some of the conclusion, and as Chris mentioned, I'll be meeting with the board to go over these this whole presentation is much more detail. I'm in the interest of time, I'm giving you a quick overview of what I found. First of all, the bylaw requires amending, first of all, because of the new Ontario Not-for-Profit Corporations Act, which the corporation will now operate under. And there are also some things that need to be clarified. Some things around membership, the annual meeting, and also the operation of the board. Some policies need to be added and some revised. I certainly will be providing a list of the ones that are important to have. Clarification of roles, responsibilities, and accountabilities. I just mentioned that in the previous slide. There are some areas where that needs to be tightened up. And as I said, I will be meeting with the incoming directors and staff to review the study findings. And I've also talked to Chris about the potential for meeting with the board and just providing a governance workshop that talks about best practices. Well, I should say with the board and staff and any other organizations that would be interested. But with the new board coming in, you've got an opportunity to really talk about best practices. So I'm going to leave it at that. As I mentioned, I gave a quick overview. When I meet with the board, I'll be going into much more detail. So back to you, Willow.
Thanks so much, Bill. I know the work you completed will help the 2023 Board of Directors get off on the right foot. Okay, next up, we have one of our current directors and interim treasurer, Ruth, to present on the audited year-end financials. Invite her in now.
And there we are. Okay, so thank you, Willow. We're just going to go through the boring part of the members meeting, but it's very important for the members and the incoming board of directors to understand the financial state of the organization at the annual general meeting. And thank you very much to Doug and to Willow for supporting RLB through the audit process this year. And we're happy to see we've got draft financial statements. Just a note on the draft that is across all of the financial statements, that will be removed and these will be considered final after they are accepted at the annual general meeting in the vote on the resolutions that will follow this portion. Next slide, please, Willow. Yeah, and the next. So this is for the year ended December 31st, 2022. And it breaks down into basically a statement of financial position, the revenues, and the report on the beginning. So yeah, you can go to the report. Thanks, Willow. There's a lot of pages to it, so we do want to make sure we're not taking up the whole night reading the fine print on this. In the independent auditor's report, the significant things to call out there are that they don't really look at the control framework in exhaustive detail. What they do is they look at and sample the control framework as a registered charity and a not-for-profit. There are certain things that they're going to be looking at to determine whether there's a likelihood of fraud or if there's a likelihood of misstatements on the financial statement. And we're happy to report that they didn't find anything very serious, and they've really just circulated in a management letter back some housekeeping issues for the management to be looking at. So that management letter will be shared with the incoming board of directors. Next slide. I think this report is a couple of pages, but that's kind of the gist of it. And then to look at the first thing, which is the statement of the financial position. When you look at this, it looks like, wow, we're doing really well. Because in 2021, our capital assets were $262,000 and now they're 400 and some odd, 450,642. When we dig into this a little deeper, we'll see on the next slide, you can move to the next one, Willow, that we have in fact declined in terms of the revenues coming in. So when you look at donations, government grants, interest income, and other income, in 2021, we had 270,000 coming into the organization, and that T is right over top of it, but we had 229,183 coming in 2022. So we've actually had a decrease in the donations coming in. And so one of the things that we're looking to strengthen going forward is to diversify the revenue sources for the organization and to really perhaps put in place a solid and robust fundraising calendar of events to drive more fundraising more directly for the organization. The other thing that helped us in terms of the first page, where we've got $400,000 to our name, is we really didn't spend a lot. As Chris mentioned with the RTO4 TRF projects, those were applications to RTO4 by the communities along the trail. So those revenues weren't directly attributable to G2G, but the work done on the trail was certainly beneficial to G2G. So that none of that shows up as revenue to us, but we benefit from the work that was done on the trail. What we have done is really contain our expenses fairly well. Our wages and benefits have gone up because organizationally there's a lot to do. And that's reflected by taking on Willow as a full-time executive director in the last board meeting. And that's just smart management. Honestly, he's well-versed in nonprofit work, and he's stood up and put in a lot of extra hours. So we do appreciate him in that. In terms of spending, really, there's the lease to Dell Management, there's licenses and permits, there's rent and professional fees, but the bulk of the program spending is really on trail maintenance, and it's on things like bridges and other capital costs. So those capital costs weren't done this year, but we are looking forward to fairly large, substantial capital projects like the Blythe Tunnel and the bridge over the Maitland or the bridge over the Conestoga River that will be transformational in connecting this trail. So that goes right back to the fundraising that we'll need to do. Next slide, Willow. So this is just the statement of the cash flow, which shows you the ins and outs for the year. And what this reflects is really our net position at the end of last year is we're up about $100,000, which is good news. And it's good news that there's money in the bank. A lot of it is tied to specific projects. So that's another thing that we'll be looking to work on in the next year, is to really fund the operations of the organization. So we have good administrative support and we're able to put the effort behind these large projects to bring them to successful conclusion. Okay, next slide. The notes to the financial statements can be a little intimidating to those who aren't used to reading them. One of the things that's significant here is revenue recognition and the rules around it, in that if we get a grant, for example, in a certain year to do a certain thing, and we have perhaps not been able to finish doing that thing in that year, the amount of the grant is then deferred into the following year or years to be recognized as revenue. So we do have about $200,000 in deferred revenue on our books, which is significant for the organization. So we'll draw some attention to that. That deferred revenue is also only drawn down as the amortization schedules on things like bridges and kiosks and other physical assets on the trail actually do run through their amortization schedules. So that's one of those lovely complexities in the accounting rules that are applied to financial statements. So that's the part that could be confusing as you're reading through it. Next slide, Willow. Yeah, and this again goes through they're just speaking to the summary of the significant accounting policies. So, and again, with the financial instruments, our transaction costs are applicable directly to either projects or, and they're classified according to what they're tied to, whether it's those grants or whether it's subject to an amortization schedule. And that, yeah. And this is the slide number 5 that speaks to that deferred revenue piece. And you can see the Blythe Tunnel is a very large part of that. There's been a significant amount of fundraising around that tunnel, and we're trying to get that one across the finish line this year. There is a mention of a prior period error that we're speaking with RLB regarding. This is really, I know, Willow, when I was speaking with you, this is to do with the amortization schedule for work that was done under the Trillium Grant. And basically that was not necessarily deferred appropriately in past financial statements because it's to be drawn down according to the amortization schedule, but they fixed it in this. So that's what that refers to. And the next slide. That's it. Those are the financial statements as of the end of December 2022. And I think in a summary statement, the organization is in decent shape. We could be in better shape, and we look forward to that. And we look forward to the efforts of the new board to really put some energy into a really solid fundraising program and some events and calendar so that we can look forward to strengthening our balance sheet and delivering on the commitments to our donors.
Awesome. Thank you so much,
And
Ruth.
it's back to you, Willow.
Thank you. Okay. Good evening, members. It is 7:15 p.m. I'd like to call the May 17th, 2023 annual meeting of the members of G2G Rail Trail Inc. to order. On the screen, you will see the agenda for this year's meeting. Members were sent the agenda ahead of time along with the resolutions and audited financials for their review. All right, so as a review, members are those who have paid membership fees by donating $100 from the start of 2022 until this AGM, or those who have donated $5,000 cumulatively towards G2G. Voting will be conducted by polling on the Zoom platform. We ask that only G2G Rail Trail members vote on the Zoom poll. This is what the Zoom poll will look like. It'll pop up on your screen and look something like that. All right, so we'll move into resolution number 1. This list of 10 candidates has been thoroughly vetted by our operations team, as well as the current board of directors. The candidates were scored on our competency matrix to ensure skill sets were well-rounded and geographic representation was ensured. We're going to start the voting now. I'll give you about 30 seconds to a minute to vote on that. Okay, last call for voting. Perfect, thank you. The resolution has passed. Just as a note, votes will be tallied after the meeting and checked against our membership lists. Resolution number 2 is the appointment of the financial auditor RLB for the year end 2023. RLB is the auditor we have used in the past years, and they're located in Guelph. I'm going to launch that poll now. Just bear with me one moment here. Okay, and I'll give you about 30 seconds to answer that poll. Perfect, thank you. All right, that resolution has passed. The third resolution is to accept the audited financials, accept the audited financial statements for the year end 2022. That poll is launching now. Perfect, thank you. That resolution has passed. The last resolution, resolution number 4, I'm going to read the preamble here. Whereas G2G Rail Trail Inc. exists for the purpose of maintaining and advocating for the trails along southwestern Ontario's historical transportation route, it is constrained by doing so by the status of the property ownership as a provincial asset and the lack of resources allocated to its operation. This has been identified as a priority concern by the board staff and consultants. So the motion is, be it resolved that G2G will support the offer of Lisa Thompson, MPP Huron-Bruce, and Minister of Agriculture, Food and Rural Affairs of Ontario to explore with her government colleagues alternative models of operation. I'm going to launch that poll now. Perfect. Thank you. That resolution has passed as well. Okay. I would like to thank all the members who voted on the resolutions this evening. We deeply value your input as critical stakeholders in our organization. All right, now for the fun part, 2023 projects. As always, lots is happening on the G2G Rail Trail experience this season, from grooming to resurfacing and tree management. So first up, we have our maintenance effort, our spring maintenance effort, which happens every year. We do have a plan to go from Goderich all the way to Guelph, resurfacing the trail, making sure the edges are cut back and there's no branches hanging too low, generally making sure it's safe and rideable, walkable, hikeable, rollable, all that good stuff. So that will be happening sometime this June, and we will be looking for volunteers to help out with the maintenance, and there will be a call out for that going out shortly. Our wayfinding is going to be improved greatly shortly. So we have multiple kiosks that will be going in the ground this spring and early summer. So these kiosks are going to be fitted with some new map boards that will look something like the one you see on the screen there, each one being specific to their location. These map boards are going on the new kiosks as well as some of the other kiosks that are currently existing and might need updated map boards, or in some cases don't have map boards at all. And again, as others have mentioned, our capital project for 2023 is the Blythe Tunnel. We're very committed to getting this tunnel done this year. And we have raised, as you saw through the financial statements, a significant amount of money towards this, coming up still a bit short of our $500,000 goal. We're looking to raise that money and have this completed by fall 2023. There will be a little bit more about the Blythe Tunnel. As you can see here, there is a great picture highlighting the significant danger that it is to cross this highway. These slopes, you can't really see them, but the going up and down each of the sides of the highway are quite steep and uneven and rocky and basically non-traversable for anybody to do safely. It's also a huge accessibility issue for welcoming all of our diverse trail users, and really unsafe for anyone to be crossing. So the idea is to put the tunnel underneath right where that intersection is, so no one needs to go across that busy highway. And I'll play this video that we had developed to kind of inspire you a little about the Blythe Tunnel.
I live in Blythe, just like one farm field from the trail. And so for me to be able to get back on a bike, riding on the G2G makes me safe.
I see it as really more essential to introducing people to cycling because it's such a safe and accessible backbone route that opens up so much more cycling.
It also connects Goderich to 500,000 people in the middle of southwestern Ontario. So it's just pulled in a whole new generation of users taking advantage of what's here.
There's two stopping points. The first one is right at County Road 25 at the edge of Blythe where the tunnel used to be. And that is literally as far west as I can go independently on the trail. And you know what, even if I had like 2 people behind me, the slope up to the road is really steep. And then crossing the road, I would be pushing it to say deadly, but it could be deadly. So that's the first stopping point. And then the second is the bridge.
The rail trail is beautifully flat, except for that bypass around the Maitland River. There's a small mountain there, and about 8 kilometers out of your way. It's actually a nice ride, but you've got to be ready for it. And most people find it it's so much different than the rest of the trail that it's quite a hiccup.
To bridge those gaps, the tunnel and the bridge would mean a complete, safe, accessible path of travel for everybody. And like people doing the bypass, they're on roads, and we all know roads are where accidents happen.
Yeah, I think everybody can be a champion for it. The trail is being developed and run right now by volunteers. The organization is a non-profit charitable, so there's lots of opportunity to donate. Donations drive other fundraising. So $1 donated is worth a lot more than $1. And if it can be 1,000, it also multiplies. But it all matters. And some of it is sort of that political capital that you build. You need to tell people in positions of power that this thing matters, that this should be as important as any other parklands or roads and other community assets, that this is a valuable community, piece of our community that needs to be looked after and continued in development and restoration.
Okay. So some upcoming reminders. We have our next semi-annual stakeholder update on October 24th, 2023. And the next annual members meeting and stakeholder update will be held on May 17th, 2024. So that concludes G2G's official 2023 annual meeting. The remainder of the meeting will focus on stakeholder updates. Thank you all to those who came out to our 2023 annual meeting and stakeholder update. We encourage everyone to support our charity by renewing your legacy membership or becoming a new member. For details, please visit our website. We're also looking for trail maintenance volunteers. If you're interested in volunteering with G2G Rail Trail, please reach out to myself at coordinator@g2grailtrail.com.